Hey everyone, and welcome to World of Tanks patch 9.5, available now. It comes to us with a bunch of new content, including a brand new British medium tank line, as well as a brand new British tank destroyer line, 3 new maps, and adds additional functionality that we only saw available via the use of mods that they now implemented into the game itself. First and foremost, we'll go ahead and cover the main items here, the British tank lines that were added. Starting off, you have the M2 light tank. It is a tier 2 tank that is commonly used in the American line, so you should be very familiar with it if you've had experience playing with the American line. It has the exact same functionality and the exact same weapons, nothing new, nothing changed, so it should be a quick, easy fit and an easy grind through it. After working your way through the M2, you'll be greeted with the Honey Stewart. It is very similar to the American version, but with the main difference of having the option to equip a 2-pounder, which sometimes can be a better option, especially in some of these tanks where you're going to find that a lot of the British options that are exclusive to their version of the tanks are the better choice as opposed to the American version of the guns. That is a definite fact for the Stewart and the following tank. Entering into tier 4, we have the Grant, otherwise known on the American version as the Lee. For the Grant though, there is a British gun that is specific to it, and it is highly recommended you take that over the 75mm that is typically equipable to the Lee. The Grant, just like the Lee, fires from its shoulder as opposed from the turret, so you'll have to be able to utilize the terrain, buildings, or anything that you can use to give yourself cover while only exposing just enough to fire forward with your gun. Keep in mind that it cannot rotate around and you have to play it very similar to a tank destroyer in order to take full effect of the Grant. Entering into the tier 5 medium tank, we find ourselves with the Sherman III, very similar to its American cousin, with very similar armaments, except that it also includes some British weaponry. But as you grind your way up through it, the 76mm will again be the choice weapon if you want to go with a normal gun, or you can additionally equip the 105 derp cannon if you want to have a little fun spamming some HE at some tanks. The Sherman III acts very similar to its American cousin in terms of its strategy, its play style, and its armor. So, if you've played through your American line and you have experience with the Sherman, then you should feel right at home with the Sherman III, no problem. The final medium tank included in this patch is the Tier 6 Sherman Firefly. This long-awaited tank has been something that many players have sought after ever since the inclusion of the British line, and probably even before then. The Sherman Firefly does feature the fantastic 17-pounder. This cannon has an excellent rate of fire, very good penetration, and moderate damage in terms of its class. You're going to be sitting at long range with this tank, throwing shells down range with its highly accurate 17-pounder, penetrating most things that it should see. The Firefly is still maneuverable enough to get away if things get a little too hairy for you, and still does operate very similar to a Sherman normally would. So your experience moving from the Sherman to the Firefly shouldn't be too difficult at all in terms of a learning curve. As we step back to Tier 5, we take a look at the first new tank destroyer that is offered in this update, and that is the Archer, the backwards-facing tank destroyer. This tank is quickly maneuverable if you're going the right direction, which is not the way the gun is facing. Most maneuverability across country is going to be done in the reverse gear, so you'll have to turn your tank around and head backwards towards where you want to position yourself. And then when you spin around to actually face your targets, you'll do your fine-tuning adjustments with your forward keys as you normally would with any other tank. But keep in mind that your reverse gear is how you quickly escape battles in case things go awry. The gun on the Archer is fantastic in terms of its penetration, its damage is pretty moderate for a Tier 5, and of all things it does have a pretty low profile. The Tier 6 British TD looks very similar to an American tank that we've already seen and played a lot of, the M10, but the British Achilles features the same gun that's on the Firefly, the 17-pounder. If you've already played the Firefly, then you'll know how this thing plays, but if you haven't, again, it's a very high rate of fire, very high penetration, but moderate damage tank gun. The role of the Achilles will actually be very similar to that of the Firefly. You'll want to set at kind of a long range, sniping away at your enemies and assisting your teammates as they make their pushes. But just like the American M10, the Achilles has very little armor, so don't rely on it to save you. You're going to have to use cover and stealth to keep you alive and choose your targets wisely when you engage them. Following the Achilles, we find ourselves using the Challenger, the Tier 7 tank destroyer. The Challenger is the final evolution of the Cromwell tank, but with a much larger turret and an upgraded gun, the 17-pounder that we've already seen in the Firefly and the Achilles. That is both the blessing and the curse of the Challenger. We've already seen this gun and we already know what experience with it, but it doesn't offer us much in the Tier 7 tank destroyer realm, as we're going to be doing very little damage in the 150 range to tanks that are going to have a lot of hit points. So expect to have to play this tank much differently than you have with other tank destroyers. You're going to be relying on helping other tanks just do that little bit more damage that they need to help clear the way. Although the Challenger does offer generous speed that allows you to reposition as needed to help out your team just that much more. The Tier 8 tank destroyer of the new British line is probably going to be one of the fan favorites. The Charioteer offers a very large 105 cannon that can fire both APCR and HESH, in addition to the standard HE. This tank is very maneuverable, has a fairly decent rate of fire for such a large gun, and does pretty decent damage with all of its rounds. The Charioteer has a lot of things going for it and will surely become a fan favorite, as it really can do a lot of great things with the gun that it has on it, in addition to its mobility. The one thing though is that the lack of armor will keep it from getting engaged in too many close range battles, as the reload time will hurt you while you don't have the armor to back up your brawl. At Tier 9, we see the FV4004, the Conway. This offers the exact same gun that the Tortoise has on it, so if you've experienced the Tortoise, you know that as a high rate of fire gun with moderately decent damage for Tier 9 and great penetration. But the Tortoise has that slow speed that the Conway doesn't. The Conway drops the armor that the Tortoise would have in favor of the ability to go faster, but it also has a much higher profile as it has a turret on it that sticks up pretty high above some terrain. So you could use this to your favor if you can find dips in terrain or rocks to hide behind, but you're surely not going to be able to bounce many rounds, so be careful where you choose to place this tank. It cannot stand up in a close range engagement, but the nice thing about the gun is you can place multiple rounds downrange, and as you know with playing the Tortoise, it does offer really good pin and really good damage. So look forward to seeing some big numbers out there rather quickly as your unexpected opponents find themselves on the receiving end of this gun. At the end of the line, we find ourselves with the Tier 10 tank destroyer, the FV4005 Stage 2. This offers the exact same gun that's on the 183, the currently existing Tier 10 tank destroyer for the British, which is notorious for its massive damage hits that it can do with its HESH rounds. This also features the HESH rounds and should operate exactly the same in terms of your ability to fire, reload, and damage things. So look out for those huge numbers out there, but be careful, the reload on this is pretty long, even with 100% crew and a rammer, Vince, etc, etc. I was looking at reload times of 25 seconds. So this is one of those where you want to place your rounds and make sure that it counts. With the 183 getting buffed in terms of its armor and its negation and speed, the Stage 2 does the exact opposite. It loses armor and makes up for it with speed. Now it is not exactly a fast Tier 10 tank destroyer, but it is much faster than what you're going to be used to with the 183 if you have that already. The problem with this thing is it does have a very high profile in comparison. It will stand up even taller than the Conway, so be very aware of your surroundings and what terrain features you're utilizing, otherwise you may find yourself exposed when you are not ready for it. In addition to the new British tank lines, the minimap was updated to have new functionality. This includes a view vector that allows you to see the distance of your view from left and right, a sector of fire for the SPGs showing you where on the minimap that you're able to see and where you're looking, and additionally displays the names of vehicles where they were last spotted and their currently active positions on the minimap. This was only available in a mod, but has been later brought into the game as just part of the game. To activate this, it is in your general settings as part of a drop-down where you need to select it to activate it and utilize it. 3 new maps were also added as part of patch 9.5. The first of which is Mittengard, a low-tier map where both teams start on opposite sides of a gully coming down into a town. This town has lots of rubble all over it and plenty of places to hide and duke it out. The flanks of this map feature areas where the artillery can sit and shell the city, but anyone who's cunning and quick enough can easily overrun anything that's in that area and take out the artillery. Both teams can see each other relatively quick and oftentimes get caught in the spawn zone still getting ready to move down the hill. So moving into the town as quick as possible is one of the utmost important things to do on this map. The town itself does offer many narrow streets for which you can hide in and duel it out in. The town does feature a large roundabout at the center though, so this will be where a lot of the fighting does take place. The second new map, Ghost Town, is a perfectly symmetrical map meant for team battles. This map offers extremely wide streets, very little in terms of rubble, but pretty decent cover if you hide behind buildings and use them for partial cover. The center of the town is a very large square raised up above most of the other area. So this will create some interesting strategies and interesting tactics as you're now fighting in a perfectly symmetrical battle arena meant for the team battles only. Overall, Ghost Town is a fairly large map where you're going to have tons of space to run around. There's a ring on the outside of the map that is completely open, so you can run very fast tanks around it if you want to go for flanking actions. In the city though, those wide open streets will become kill lanes, and being a symmetrical area, you're going to have very long lines of fire to take advantage of. The final new map added as part of 9.5 is the winter version of Runeberg, yet another flavor of Runeberg called Winterberg. This time you now get to see it in a lovely shade of white with snow and ice everywhere. Sadly, no effects to your tank in terms of driving and sliding, still is about the exact same in terms of gameplay, and the map is identical, although the nice shade of white is something different compared to what we're used to currently. Those were the highlights of patch 9.5 for World of Tanks. I hope you all enjoyed it. Be sure to check out the World of Tanks website for more information on 9.5 and in order to download World of Tanks if you do not already have it. 9.5 does offer more things in terms of updates and fixes to the game, so if you want to check out those patch notes, I will have them in the description. And in the meantime, thank you for coming out and watching my review of patch 9.5. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thank you to World of Tanks for providing me with the account with which to test all the new tanks and provide you some access and notes to them. Anyway, thanks everybody, and I will catch you in the next video.